Well, if you want to put on a convertible top, especially the KEE one-piece one, you might want to watch my video. That's what this video is about. Stay tuned. Okay, let's talk prep. You're going to remove the entire old top. You need to inspect these cables. Mine look like crap, but they're not bad. This is 180,000 miles of wear on my cables, and they're the same probably now as they were. There you go. Let's see, you can see it here. Okay, it's intact. This one isn't hooked up. It should be, but it's not. The top in general, I've cleaned the boot cover thingy. Mine had some water collect in it from time to time, and I would vacuum it out before I drove the car. It sounds horrible, but basically I had a bad top for a couple years at least, probably more like a decade. Kept it mostly in the garage, but from time to time it would sit outside, and when it did, if it got rained on, then I would basically go and clear it out, which is really a horrible way to treat your car. But I have too many Mustangs, as you can kind of get a sense for, and I didn't have a place to put it at the time. I was working on the motor for this one. So anyways, the car's needed a top for quite some time, and so I'm down to getting ready to put the top on, and one of the things I've done is started cleaning. So I need to do a little bit more cleaning here. You can see it, this channel. I'm going to clear it out because this is the last chance you really get to clean before the top goes on. So I'll clear all this back out, clean it up. This is one heck of a science project, folks. There's way more going on with my car than just a convertible top. And that will give you some idea. That's an anti-gravity battery and a 10 farad capacitor. And the cap is not necessarily for the sub. It is for the Coyote and making sure voltage is steady and that there's plenty of juice to drive things like all of the electronic components inside the Coyote motor. So I'm just trying to get my trunk finally cleared up, because right now with the top off the thing is a moment where I can see all of my stuff without any kind of thing being in the way, which is quite beautiful. And when I did the Coyote swap, the top was of course functional and I never touched it, and now that I've got the top off of it, I'm kind of like, I could fix some of this or that, whatever. So yeah, that's where I'm at. This will go in. Alright, one more thing before you get started. This goes near the front of my video. Remember that. Have yourself a piece of cardboard. This is a decent size. Probably mine could have been half, obviously. And a Sharpie, okay? I kept the Sharpie hanging off of one of these holes the entire time. And as I pulled fasteners out, I stuck them in here, or I had a little container that I kept some of the fasteners in that wouldn't tack up to a board. There's a couple of reasons why this is great. It's because you can put little notes on there about what kind of tool you used or whatever, where they came from, draw little pictures. It's kind of nice. Beats the hell out of trying to fish through some bucket looking for this stuff, okay? Clearly I still have one more fastener to put in my headliner retainer. That's another reason, okay? And then finally, I did a little bit of cleanup on the heads as they're visible. Most of these fasteners are not visible, okay? So cleaning up the heads, who cares, okay? But great time to clean stuff up if they need cleaned up. You know, this is a 23-year-old car. Some of the stuff needs cleaned up. But have yourself a piece of cardboard and label everything as you take it off. Don't be in a hurry. Document as you go. This has worked for me. Other than that, my life's chaos, but stuff like this has saved me, okay? All right, well, I got the boot cover cleaned up, and armor-alled. It's going to be really hard to do stuff like that with the top on the car. So I'm going to do one last clean through this channel here. The old top's obviously off, and you can watch several videos on how to do that. And I recommend CJ Pony Parts' removal, but don't go for his install, even though he's a good guy and he's trying hard. He tries to take some shortcuts that don't work. For example, before you put the new top on, you really need all this trim out of the way, which truly means you're going to pull your back seat. You don't have to go as far as I did. I pulled the subs as well, the rear speaker cabinets. I'm doing more than he was doing, but my point is, take your rear seat out, take out everything except for the subwoofer, or pardon me, rear speaker containers. Remove all of this trim. My top had been replaced at one point, and all of these studs were kind of, I think somebody just zipped them on with some kind of spin gun and didn't really pay attention. I had to rethread a couple of them so that they were easy to thread. So I took my time and got a kit to do them. I believe they're M610 or M6 1.0 thread pitch. I went and redid the two that were kind of complaining whenever I went through every one of them. Also, I recommend you put never sees on everything, which I do because I live in Ohio, and everything in Ohio is subject to some kind of salt in the air kind of situation. It's because of a salt mine in Lake Erie. So everything that I touch on this car, I end up using never sees on it to get it so that if there's ever a moment, I have to caveat that if there's a bolt that has to be torqued down like lug nuts, I don't never season the lug nuts because it will mess with the torque spec. But anything that's not really got a heavy duty torque spec, I pretty much never sees it just to make sure I can get it in and out. So I am ready at this point to do my top, and my first step after cleaning this channel out one last time will be to staple the rear of my top, which is laying here, to the rear window retainer, which is this thing. And mine looks yellow and yours is probably bare metal. I think they galvanized it from the factory. After 23 years, mine was showing just a tiny bit of surface rust, so I did a cleanup of all the rust, and then I spray painted it. That looks zinc yellow, but it is not. That is John Deere yellow. Nobody will ever see it, but underneath this coat of yellow is POR 15. So what I'm getting at is, when you take your old top off, look around everything that mates with the car, all of the spots that you can't normally see. Look for, surface rust to clean up, clean that all up, and, get everything coated for the next millennium, because these cars are now, 2 decades old. Everything about them is potentially going to rust at some point. So I redid all of this so that when I put it back in the car, it's going to handle the rust. In a similar fashion, I had a small amount of surface rust here. I went and cleaned that up, POR 15'd it. I'm going to touch it up. It's the best I can do without paying someone to repaint that, which I really don't care about. What else? Golly. That's good enough to get us started. That's where we're starting at. So in other words, before you watch my video on how to put the top on, you need to go and watch a video on how to remove the top. Bear in mind that your key top, the one with the single piece window, which is the one we're putting in here, that top does not attach the same way as the factory top. There's some differences, and as I come across them, I'll show them to you. But I went and looked at my buddy Ito's 2004 Mustang, and the top is attached here and here, and the rest of this it's not, and I suspect this new top that I'm putting in will have similar kinds of stuff. So let's get. All right, so I brought the top into my living room here to get a measurement of the center line and to do the stapling of this, the rear retainer strip, okay, which, as you can see, mine is painted yellow. All right, makes it pretty visible. Anyways, use these eyelets in the center to measure from here to the center point that you think you've measured to validate that you're at the true center of the top before you staple anything. I did that, and then I thought about this strip before I staple it in place. I put these, you can see them there, these zip ties. And there's about 6 per side, 2 in each loop section there. And the idea is the way the KEE top comes out. Other tops, from what I've seen, don't have the holes punched already, but the KEE top does. So, and they line up pretty good with the actual bow holes. Okay, so for example, these guys, if you look, they line up pretty nicely. So I can use some zip ties to get them roughly where they belong, so that while I'm stapling, it's kind of like held roughly where it needs to go. And I'm going to go from the center, and I'm going to staple outward on each side carefully. And I'm going to, that way, get my rear bow, my rear retaining piece in where it needs to go. And then when I put the top in the car, this part here that you see will actually be folded up very similar to the way you see it a little bit further in, so I can actually staple the first staples to it. Anyways, the zip ties aren't really holding anything. They're here just to keep the top roughly where it belongs as I staple. All right? And then when I'm all done, I'll cut them out and do some more stapling. But the initial staples will then be roughly where they need to be to make this top be in the right spot. I'm going to use a similar technique here. I'll have probably 4 instead of 6 per side. All right, let's get going. All right, so I got my first one on one side. I cut loose the zip ties I had between these two and these two. Is that right? Might have just been one set, I think, between here and here. Yes. And I'm going to go over here, but the main thing I want to stress is I'm trying to make sure there's a good seal here, and that these holes line up. That's what you're after, because this thing has to slip over the holes, okay, in the back of the car. This one is the most important one, obviously. It's the center one, so you're going to get that centered really good. And then as you work through and staple, just make sure that these holes line up, which is what the zip ties help you do, because they kind of hold everything where it's going to be roughly. You're not going to have this thing cattywampus as you go. So I'm going to go the other direction, do this one, come back, do this one, go back, do that one, till I close off the ends. Alright, switching back to my garage. You can see I've got my zip ties in place again. I'm preparing to zip tie down these last 2 corner pieces. I've got the main center piece stapled, and I'm going to staple down this guy and remove the zip ties. So it's not really that difficult. I'm not really an upholstery guy, but this, you know, from what I can tell of the way this is constructed, the idea is to have a seal against the car. Let's go over that. So I cleaned all this out, and, you know, try and keep your eyes off all the weird things that you're seeing about a New Edge car, because there's nothing about my car that's stock. But the convertible top is, for the most part, stock. So I guess my statement, nothing about it, is wrong. Anyways, point is, the way this thing works, from what I can tell, is the top is sealed to this rubber strip here, for the most part. And rain comes in, water comes in, whatever. And there's a channel here. See it? For anything that might make it past that strip. And that channel is supposed to feed everything down into this hole here, and then the top here, same story. Is there's moldings and stuff here. However, water is by design going to make it past that and roll down into some drain hole down below. All right, and I think I've seen those under the car, but neither here nor there. It works for the most part. This car's been in the rain a lot. I mean, it's fine. However, you got to get that seal good to prevent a lot of rain from getting past it. And then my thoughts are stick a bead of silicone across the top edge here, and it'll use the primary drains the way they're supposed to be for the most part. Those are my thoughts. I'm going to try it. So the main thing is get a nice seal here. You know, the top then is going to channel the water where it's supposed to be if it doesn't seal it up from whatever weirdness that I've set up. Anyways, when you're stapling this thing, you want, you know, the KEE top people have given you a pretty good place to start. I'm going to use, they've got the holes punched, in other words, where they should be already. So I'm using the zip ties mainly to start my alignment, and then I'm going to keep in alignment with these holes in these pieces. The main issue I've run into with the stapler is if you're on this metal edge, your stapler's gonna, you know, chip and not make it. So you got to kind of stay close to the center line of this staple strip. Hope that makes sense. All right. There's one spot I'm not real happy with here. These guys, but I'm happy with the seal along here. That's what I'm after. I think that the top is curved, and this is a curved area of the car. If you look where it's bolting into here, right here, see it? And given the fact that they're kind of curved, you've got to have some spot where the slack is taken up with, and I think it's going to be along the bottom there. And I got my staples in where I want them. Good enough. I think that's going to hold. Let's do the other side. Alright, I don't have the ability to film myself while I'm working, so you have to deal with the picket fencing here. So basically, my first couple staples here were too high or too low, and I found my center and then made my extra staples, pulled the ones that were bad. Anyways, I'm working my way to either side of this strip is the main thing. While these guys hold the material roughly in place where it's going to land, thanks to the fact that zip tie is kind of similar width to the bolt hole. Okay? So they just sort of help you be an extra set of hands. I'm going to remove this zip tie, and I'm going to put a couple more staples here, remove this zip tie, and keep working my way to this edge with my eye on keeping this bolt hole lined up with that hole. And that will get me my top alignment where I want it to be. Hope that makes sense. Alright, got this one done on this end, and I'm going to pull this last zip tie, start stapling, and keep my eye on this bolt hole and close it off. Hope that. Alright, I got it stapled down. I'm going to pull one of the last staples here and fix it from the outside, but this was tricky for a host of reasons. The first one is that I'm a short guy. You know, I don't have the reach that the guy at CG Pony Parts did. And so I stood inside my trunk. I just got a step ladder, put my feet 1 foot over to the left of the tire well and the other one to the right, and then I could easily spot the center, which is the 4th bolt over. These are seven screws here holding this headliner in, and you can see how the top works. Basically from here, this thing here will fold over, and I can put this back piece in. Anyways, the main trick here was that, and patience. I just, you know, this is not my normal gig, guys, you know, so I'm taking my time and I'm documenting everything. So you start with these screws here, find your center, match it to the center that you measured. Again, this strip is not necessarily in the center of the top. It's close, but you have to find the center. And I used these eye holes on the floor of my living room, and my wife's help actually, to make sure I was correct. And then basically at that point, put my staples in when I put the top on. So I'm ready to move to the next step after this one. Alright, I got the rear bow stapled, and the next step is to install these 2 front bows. And this one you can see I've already pulled it out, and this one it's T30s and T20s. The T20s hold the retaining screws for the headliner, and the T30s hold the top. And I don't know, I haven't found out how does this thing. Clearly, once you got the bow back in place, you're going to have to put these screws back in to screw this bow back to this. It's just going to be interesting. I guess you just go through the center and find a hole and screw it in, but it's going to suck. Guaranteed, it's going to suck. Because you're going to be coming from the underside of this top to screw those holes in. So maybe you do that with the bow in the holes there, maybe. I don't know. We'll figure it out. That's where we're at, though. You flop the back of it down, and it's ready to go in place yet, but we're not going to do that. We're going to work away the front, work away the back, and it's sort of a back and forth kind of motion here, and eventually you get the thing in place. All right, we're on this center bow here, and there are staples in the bow that hold this. I believe it's a headliner protector. It's like a wear strip made of nylon. In place on this bow, we need to pull them in order to get the bow out, because the bow goes into here. And then the tricky part is reinstalling the 5 screws that hold the headliner to this bow, which in CJ Pony Parts they use 2 hands. They have a guy holding this thing up, but I can easily see that if I just take a zip tie and put it through this center hole, if I punch a hole, in other words, in this strip here, and where the screw goes roughly, and zip tie this thing in place, that I can then easily get these screws in, or hopefully easily get them in. It's going to be tricky because basically you have to reach in through here while you do the work, and that's tricky. Anyways, get the headliner. This bow goes into that loop. There's T30s that hold this in, and also you can see that this strip here is held down with some staples. I need to pull all these staples on either side so I can get this out, insert it into there, and then go back. So let's do that. Alright, I've got the second bow threaded. These bolts are loose. I never seize everything, so I put never seize in these holes and everything. While the bow was off the car, fitted all the nuts, pardon me, the screws into it. There's 2 of these T30s on each side and 5 T20s in the center. And now I'm going to put these in, but the first problem you're up against is, you know, according to the CJ Pony Parts, you need 2 people. However, my plan is, as usual, a zip tie. And to zip tie this guy in using this outermost screw hole in the top, and to find that screw hole and on the outer edge there, and just work my way over with this one zip tied in place, and then cut the zip tie at the end and put the screw in. So let's see how that. Alright, so I got my first bow in. I've got to tighten my bolts up. They're hand tight right now, these outer screws. But all the T20s that make up the headliner attachment inside of here are in place. The trick was to do them by hand, one at a time. Start with zip tied on this side and taped. I have to point out the tape helps keep this thing from moving. You don't want the top to move center to center. It has about a 2 or 3 inch slop in either direction. You got to get the top on the bow right where it belongs, and then attach that headliner piece to it, to the bow, and you'll get it, okay? But each screw, I started with this side zip tied down, and then over there on the other side I did the first screw, and then I came back over here, pulled the zip tie, did this screw, then I went back over there, did that screw, came back over here, did this screw, and then I did the one in the center, and then I tightened them all right? Now, the trick for me was getting them started is an absolute, pardon me, bitch, because you can't feel through that. You have to sort of start the screw through this cloth piece here, okay? And it's a pain. But once you're past that, then you got to find the hole that matches up. And it should be fairly easy to find, but for me, it was tricky on each side until I got them started. Once I got them started, I was able to tighten them down. Not all the way at first. I tightened them down one at a time, got them down to where they were about right, and then went back and tightened them all the way once I got them all in. And again, I'm using Never Sees on all of my bolts here. Okay, you can kind of see a little of it in that hole there. The idea is to this is what this stuff looks like in northeast Ohio, where I live. I mean, you can kind of see some of it. This has never really seen any rain, but look at it. It's just, the car's been bathed in acid, and you know, there's just gonna be attrition. Now I've got some stuff I'm going to treat this with. One more thing is, while you've got this top in this particular spot, it's a good idea to go over all of the joints with some kind of lube. I did that already. So what I decided to use, can't find it. It's probably over here. Is it? Nope. Put it back already and lost it. Great. Anyways, use something to lube the top, because you've got a spot now where you can kind of see all of the mechanical joints of the thing, and you want to have it be free moving. Anyways, I'm going to staple these guys down after tightening down my pieces here, and go from there. Well, good news, everyone. The front one is a whole lot easier to do. Front one being this headliner retainer, because you can fold the top back upside down if you're careful, and you can actually see where you're mounting this to, since you can kind of, you get enough space here to do it. So to me, this is a much easier way to do it. The other thing is, you can see clearly the centering of the bow, because roughly, if you look, this bolt hole here lines up with that seam on both sides. Let's go look. Oh, dear God. The amount of work, see it, is phenomenal. And so we can get this bow kind of tilted. We mainly need it parallel with the top. It's all going to flop over and meet this, and this guy can kind of stretch to meet it. And so once again, I don't need another person. I'm going to very carefully insert my screws in these holes, which I know where they are. I'll be able to see it this time because this is much more easier to spot. And I can just put these in knowing that this hole lines up with that seam and that I'm centered. So let's get that done. This guy was done. It's pretty easy to do. One-handed if you follow the directions I showed with using a zip tie on one side to hold it up. The main issue is getting under here and feeling each of the screws one at a time is just painful. So I'd say this is probably one of the hardest parts of the top so far. Anyways, let's go. Okay, after much experimentation, I finally decided that was not going to work, and I bolted the bow in the way that the CJ Pony Parts guys did it. And I still have to get to the headliner retainers under here, which I can show on camera if I flap that back. There they are. So the question is, can I lift up this thing and find the center of these bolt holes? Because the top is kind of working its own magic right now. If I tap it down, it's centered on the car, which, considering everything else, you know, like it's about the center where it needs to be. The question is, when I screw the holes in for the headliner here, will I keep it where it is? It's easy for it to slide along this bow. Okay, so it's tacked down here in the center for sure, and this one it's in the center roughly, but I need to get this one as close as I can to the center. And then basically when I tack this piece down here, it'll stretch out and fit on this, and hopefully it'll look like it's supposed to look. Heck if I know. I've only done this one top. But anyways, I'm going to start here and see if I can, without moving the top at all, get the one screw over on the left hand side started. And all right, I got these installed, all of these tight. This was almost as hard as the second bow. So the third bow, or the one just before the front, is tricky too. Just very hard to get under here unless you get the right tools, and I didn't. I had to use a pair of vice grips and the Torx bit to slowly cinch these in, and I did get them in. These bows are tricky, and it's easy to mess them up, so don't over tighten these. Just get them tight and watch yourself, because I think the person who worked on my top used some kind of mechanical air tools or something, because a lot of the fasteners are kind of buggered up, and I'm having to straighten them out. Other than that, I mean, all my stuff I think is going to work with the original equipment for the most part, and I just have to get these guys next. These have to go through here, so I'm going to put the top down halfway, unhook these, and use these strings provided by the KEE people, the KEE people, to pull this part of the spring through the top and reattach it. and that'll cause the top to be cinched down from this area, if you look through to here. So I'm probably also going to just set these guys in where they belong for the first time. So let's see how that looks. Alright, well, my aging top cylinders make this top want to kind of go down on its own without any help. It takes a good 2 to 3 minutes, but it'll sink. So one of the things I've done is just bungee it up into a stable position. Took it up halfway and then hooked that up while it was still in its topmost position. Now, the next step here after doing the front 2 bows is to do this, the side tensioner cables. I had a bit of surface rust on this. I put some rust inhibiting paint on it. It's not obvious, but it's there. Not like POR 15, in other words. I don't think it's a real issue. If this is 23 years of rust on the thing, it's not really something I'm going to worry a whole lot about. Unlike other spots that I have found on the car. Anyways, the KEE people provide these really nice feeder strings. So you tie the string to this and then pull it through the top to here while the top's in the halfway up position. These are the tensioning cables. This is not really a big deal. I'm about to do it. So just showing you how you get here. Alright, after you've done the springy thingies on the sides, you have to insert these loops. KEE says you don't need to staple these down like I did, and it kind of helps if you don't. So don't follow in my footsteps, because I found out it's completely possible to staple that rear hoop in, the rear retaining tack strip, in completely backwards, upside down and cattywampus. Looks great, will never fit. I was wondering why it wouldn't fit for the longest time. Well, I found out it was upside down. So had to pull all my staples and had to thought I'm going to staple it again. I thought, why am I doing this? When I read the instructions, it says I don't need to staple it. So I'm not going to staple it. My initial thoughts were I'm going to put a piece of silicone caulk in that crevice there. So why do it? Anyways, put all these in finger tight, starting with the center of that bow and moving your way outwards. And as you move outwards, you'll find that you can get the outer ones in finger tight. It is a pain in the neck. You need a 13-inch deep well, 12-point socket. I use a 1/2 inch. Right now I'm running into trouble because due to the tension of the top, I can't quite get the socket on the 1/2 inch socket over here, the wrench on the socket, so I'm going to get an extension, the kind of has a slight U-joint quality to it. Oh, and do that. Let's take a look at this weird setup and why I did that. So, in my instructions, it'll say something to the effect of, you know, put top up with a barrier. This is what I mean. I got a cushion and I put my welding jacket between it. It just wasn't quite released enough. So you have just enough tension off the top so you can get these bolts in without killing yourself. And you have the top down enough to where you can reach through this hole, because wow, there's not a whole lot of space to work back in there, and it's warm too. I've got air conditioning in my garage and I'm frying in there. So anyways, there's a very specific sequence that you tighten these in, and I'll paste the graphic in my video too. It's also in the CJ Pony Parts graphic. But you start in the center, see 1, and then 2, 3 on one side, 4, 5 on the other side, the outer bolts. Then you go 6, 7, the outer bolts on the main tack strip, and you go 8, 9 on one side, 10, 11 still on that same side, then 12, 13, 14, 15 on the other side, then these final 2 on each side. So it's sort of a weird pattern. They say do this, so I'm going to do it. And that's the pattern I'm following. And it is slow going, okay? I'm working alone, as usual. You don't need another person to do this top, I don't believe. But it might help, but it also might slow you down. I don't know. I think, you know, it's nice to take your time, just get it right, enjoy the ride, get your top right. Maybe it won't leak for like, you know, a decade. That's, you know, a nice thought. I paid somebody else to do it. They screwed it up. I'm going to stop whining about it. I'm going to make it right. Anyways, that's the path. All right, next step after getting the rear tack bow in place, so the rear tack strip, is to get these springs attached to the top. Now, I thought about this and I've been having trouble getting them attached, and I realized I mainly need this spring not to come loose. And so my goal here is to zip tie them in place like this. I don't know if you can see them. I'm just going to tighten this zip tie down. It'll hold that loop, hold the spring to the loop, and call it a day. I'm going to latch that hook there so that it's holding it, but it'll be a whole lot easier to latch once it's pulled up. And we'll leave the zip tie in place. And if it breaks or wears out, I'll put another zip tie on. All right. That's what the zip tie thingy looks like. Almost like the original loop hickey, but maybe a little less tension. We'll find out if it works. I'm pretty certain we're going to be fine. The other thing I am doing here, which I learned as I went along, is a silicone bead from here to the other strip. Since my theory is that most of the water is made to run out of this top along that channel. If you seal it at the top, it'll run down through here like it's supposed to. I'm just going to prevent tops leaking from not being stapled down, etc., etc. We'll find out. I'll let you know after a year or so. We'll take a dive back and see how this goes. So my next step is to install the clips here. Alright, these clips go on really easy. There is a part of the car sticking up here, and this little tab on the top should be right there. It is on mine. On both sides, it lined up perfectly. See it? And this kind of tells you you're doing something right. And you can see my zip tie method for holding these loops in place worked. I've got my side cables installed, and it is time to move to, I believe we're nearing the final step of stapling, which is to staple in the top of the thing here to the upper ceiling thing here. I'm also thinking I'm going to stick some silicone in here. Just a thought. I don't know that I need it, but it's a thought. I can do that after the top is all installed, though. It's not a big deal. Okay, let's get that in. Okay, for the next step, you actually need rubber cement, which I happen to have some. So the rest of this is just stapling down the top, starting from each edge and working your way in. I think I'm going to rewatch the video, but I believe the top just fits right down in this channel. Again, you can see my redneck solution to the top cylinders slowly leaking. I'm just about there. I have to get this thing stapled down. Then I'm going to let this dry probably 45 minutes and then pull these and then put my strip back down, reinstall my trim. So we're slowly getting there. Anyways, this isn't as hard as putting in these rear tack strip bolts. I'm telling you right now. This is fairly straightforward. These pieces here clearly fit a certain way. All right, top is on. Oh, the stapling along here is actually one of the easier things after you've lined this up the way they show you. I mean, you'll see it when you go to fold these in. I don't think I caught this on video, but you fold in a thing around here and you can see exactly how this lines up, and stapling it down is nothing compared to some of the other tasks, like trying to get this centered, or to try and, I'd say the hardest part of the entire operation is getting that freaking bow in the back here. This rear tack strip installed. You have to work through that window with the top half down, and it is absolutely a pain in the neck getting those bolts tightened in sequence. Oh, my pump is going, and my pump is good, brand new actually. The cylinders on my top are worn, so it wants to fall up and fall down whenever it's, I mean, it wants to kind of roll backwards if it's up halfway, and probably now would be the time to replace them, but they're working fine, other than this last bit I'm about to tell you. Which is that it wouldn't, I remember back in the day when my first top was replaced back in 2003. Okay, so 20 years ago this top got replaced. Somebody cut into the top to steal some money from the car. I had like a change thing in my car, and somebody guessed that there might be money in it, or it was probably trying to steal whatever they could out of the car, and they cut, I believe, right here, reached down, unlocked the car, and I had to have the top replaced. And whoever did the top, it was the two-piece top, they left the original rear window in and replaced the top, and it never, after that point, would seal. I mean, I just was really bummed out about it. So got it all replaced, and I remember the first probably year of closing this lid was an experience, because it was really tight, and then it eventually worked its way out. And they say in the instructions it will be tight the first time, and boy are they right. But my poor old cylinders just weren't up to the task to bring it all the way down, and so I used a rather unconventional, I wish I'd filmed it, technique of just some ratchet strips attached to the lower hinges and these latch handles to cinch the top the last inch or so down and get it in place and latch it. And I'm going to leave it that way for a bit, because I know the longer it sits at a certain stretchiness, it'll, you know, it's like wearing a pair of jeans or anything else, you know, the thing will, you can see it's tighter than a drum though. It's really, really tight. Looks good. I suspect it won't leak because I did quite a lot of work sealing it up and making sure it was right. I developed some novel techniques here to put it on, but they're all in my documentation. So I hope this video helps you. Mainly I hope my document helps you, because if you just take that document and work it line by line, mainly after the top is off the car, because taking the top off isn't that hard. Putting it back on, as we have seen here, that's difficult. And just I'm not comfortable doing stuff like this. This is just way out of my comfort zone. Glad I did it, because I wanted my top not to leak. Glad I did it my way, because if I'm going to make any mistakes, they'll be mine. But I also have learned over time that, you know, when I do it myself, if I find a small thing that's like, oh, this needs some touch-up or whatever, I'll do it myself and fix it. Whereas somebody that's doing the top is there to replace the top, and they're just going to leave whatever they find, you know. Oh, there's a dead body here. I got to move on. I'm here to replace the top. They're not going to do the right thing. So do it yourself, in my opinion, if you have the time, mainly, and the motivation, because you are in for, if you're doing it right, you're in for a bit of work. I have a friend that did it in a weekend. Actually, I have two friends that have done it in roughly a weekend, and I think they're just more talented than I am. I'm a klutz, you know, and for every step forward, every 2 steps forward I take 1 step back, typically. Case in point, I stapled in this rear bow completely upside down. Had to remove all the staples with the top on the car, flip it over, and I thought, am I going to staple it back? The guys at KEE tell me I don't even need staples. Why am I stapling it? So I left the staples out in a year or so I'll know if that was a good idea or not. Bolted everything down according to key instructions, and it came out nice. It looks the way I want it. So like I said, I hope this helps you, and hope the document helps you. Feel free to comment, and other people will find your comments if you find certain things that you think, okay, this could have been better or whatever. I'm not perfect, you know, and by no means think that I know everything about all this, because quite frankly, this was a step off of a cliff. Thankfully, there were some branches to hang on to on the other side. Hope it helps. Thanks for tuning in. Don't forget to subscribe, tell your friends. I haven't posted in a while because I've had some family things that I've been taking care of, but I'm about to do the barrel swap. Well, I did the barrel swap actually. And we'll take just a minute to talk about the barrel. That's a Coyote engine cover sitting on top of an Australian 6-cylinder. I've got plans to pull this motor out, put a turbocharger setup on it and everything, and get it all back in. That's my next step, and I've got all the parts to put this car together. I just, like I said, I've had some family issues. Decided I needed to take a few minutes to take care of my good old friend here, who has served me for 23 years, and get this top fixed, because gosh, I was just tired of leakage, and it's such a pain in the neck to have to clear out water after a car wash, or if you've been out in the rain, etc. I just wanted it to have its good old top working again, and so that leaves just a few things on this car that I haven't completely disassembled and done my way. The dashboard is one of them. It's only like 70% disassembled. The rear bumper, I don't think I've ever had that off. Just about everything else though. Anyways, hope you're enjoying the ride. Don't forget to subscribe, tell your friends. Thanks for tuning in. Okay, when you're done with your convertible top install, the first thing you should do, in my opinion, is put some kind of protectant on it. I got this Mother's stuff. Mother's stuff. Let's see what it is exactly. By recommendation of a friend. Vinyl, leather, rubber, cleans, conditions, and protects, penetrates, blah blah blah. Okay, so get yourself a nitrile glove or something similar and rub it in, and then wipe off the excess after you've hit every part of the vinyl top. Your top's brand new and it doesn't need cleaned. You know, if you buy this stuff to put on your car later, you're going to need to clean the top. So do it while you just put the top down. I'm doing that the first thing I do, in other words, before the thing has a chance to get dirty, and then I wish I'd put the stuff down. Anyways, that is one tip that I'm going to have to post out of order here. I'll stick it in at the very end of the video. The other tip I'll cover in a separate video, so I can put it at the beginning before you get started. Alright, it's the next day. I let the top sit overnight to get stretched out. I don't know if that helped or not. Truthfully, I don't know what kind of, you know, tensile strength that vinyl has or anything like that, but it does. I know from my original experience of replacing the top, or having the top replaced back in 2003, I remember the first few times that I put the top up and down, it got progressively better. And I did not need ratchet straps to pull it down, even with my wheels, my top cylinders being slightly, you know, gimpy, as I've talked about. They're the original cylinders. They've got some wear. It brought the top right up. A couple more things I want to talk about, which is you don't need to undo these strap liners. I did. I'm going to put them back. I had trouble trying to figure out where they were. My friend came over with his 04, and I saw where they screw into the top. You just need the back ones that go through the area here. And while the top is off, is a great time to put some lube on your top. I think I covered this during the top install, but it doesn't make anywhere near the noise since I lubed it. It used to squeak a little bit as it went up and down. It doesn't. And also, great idea. Put some top conditioner on it while it's, you know, brand new. Okay, otherwise you have to clean it and then put the top conditioner on it. And this definitely is the time to do it. I just have to put a couple more rubber strips in and put those screws back in place. And I think I've got one more screw in the top area here that I need to put in, and I'll have the top completely reassembled from where it was. And of course you can see my interior is completely out. And if you're sitting here going, my Mustang doesn't look anything like this, it's because there probably isn't one stock item in this car that hasn't, you know, everything has been goosed in the name of, you know, a better chassis. I mean, I've got the great suspension augmentation. It's stiffer than ever. This car has just so many changes from stock, it's not even funny. Nothing about it other than just a few of the remaining items is stock. So there's a lot of work. But the top is stock for the most part in terms of how it works. And I documented all of this for you to follow the steps. So hopefully that helps you. Between 2 or 3 other videos I link in my sources on my spreadsheet that I can share with the steps, you should be able to watch those videos, get a feel for what you're in for if you decide to replace your top. And I did, and I'm happy. It goes up and down and attaches. I don't need, you know, ratchet straps to attach it. It seals for the most part from what I can tell. I'll actually run it through a car wash and see how it behaves at some point. And we'll just, yeah,